Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Streaming Alchemy. I'm John Mahoney, and on today's show, we're going to take a look at a piece of beta software that has just been released about a month ago by Elgato called Virtual Stream Deck. And it lets you do some really interesting and pretty cool things once you get to start working with it. So, before we get to that, though, as always, if you have any questions, any comments, just post them below and we'll try to get to them live here on the show. Also, if you'd like to join us live on the show, we will have somebody, we have a link here, and somebody in the studio will be able to get you on and we can have a conversation about all things that we're talking about here on this show. So please feel free, don't be shy. All right, so let me start by just touching on what Elgato released with the Virtual Stream Deck. So most people who are in the streaming space are very familiar with all the different models of Stream Deck, from the 4x8s to the 15 key smaller ones, even to the really small ones. But in the beta software, beta release 7 of their software, what they actually added was a virtual Stream Deck, a Stream Deck that you can just put on screen and use either your touch screen or your mouse to click on the buttons. And based on some of the capabilities in that, I was able to do the following. So let me just show you this vMix screen here, and you'll get a sense of some of the cool things you can do. So for this, what I did is I set up 2 virtual Stream Decks here. One, which lets me decide which one of my LiveToAirZ remote participants gets assigned to which box in my multi-box shots. And the other lets me select whether I want the host and 1 guest, the host and 2 guests, 3 guests, 4 guests, just the guest, or just the host. And I have these all here as buttons that are sort of pinned to the screen where they are. And this gives me sort of a simple control surface for almost everything I need to do without even having to take my eyes off the screen. I can see everything that's happening in real time. And you can even have traditional, Stream Deck style buttons where I could do things like set up timers and other things. So I know if somebody's talking, to give them a certain amount of time and then be able to break in or cue the host to move the show along. So a lot of really cool stuff you can do, integrating it into sort of the overall control interface that you're using. It doesn't have to be vMix. This will always sit on top of whatever is on screen, and that gives you that sort of extra control layer that you can use. So why don't we look actually at the Stream Deck software here. Oh, before we do that, we have a few people who have joined us in the comments, so let's get to that. So William, thank you. Great to see you here. I appreciate you joining. So, Tom, he has something to share later. Absolutely. Just let me know. Maybe if you can hang around for the post show, that would be great. Otherwise, just post something and we'll try to break in at a good stop point. So let's see. Oh, Bowles Promo, you are a hearty man up at 4 a.m. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Oh, you demand. Good to see you. Thank you. Okay, so hold on a second. I just lost my microphone here. All right, sorry about that. So let's jump in here and take a look at the Stream Deck for Stream Deck 7 here. And if you, let me switch over to the screen here. Okay, so if you look here, this is very much the standard Stream Deck where you pick whichever Stream Deck you have, and then you can assign buttons with different functions that are all sitting here. So all of that is pretty standard. But where it's different is if you go in here to select which Stream Deck you want to work with. So we have multiples that are here, but you now see that you have virtual Stream Decks, and you can just go here now and say, add a virtual Stream Deck. So we have the two that I showed you on the intro screen, the one to switch what multi-box layout and the other to assign uh, LiveToAirZ participants to specific boxes in the multi-box layouts. So those are these two that we have set up here. So I'll just sort of click through them, and you can see this is basically what you saw on the screen. But we're going to create a new one just so you can see sort of the full extent of what they can do. So I just go here where it lets me select, and I can go and say, add a virtual Stream Deck. And it starts out with sort of this mini 6-button view. But this is a little bit misleading. So if I come here and go into the default settings, there are a lot of options. And the first one, which is probably the most significant one, is that you can come here now and you can create a virtual Stream Deck, which is, I'll sort of drag this over here so you can see what I'm doing. Give me a second. This is the Stream Deck, the virtual Stream Deck that I just created. And it's an 8x8 Stream Deck here. But I could go in and I could change this to anything that I wanted. So this could be, say I just wanted something that you wouldn't normally get. I want only 2 rows because I want to put this sort of over on the side. And so I want 2 columns and 4 rows here. I could have this little thing that sort of pins to the side, and that could work very well. And then you would you would assign things to it. So if I wanted to do any sort of vMix things, you do them just like you would in your normal thing. And now you can see it's showing there. But what the other thing that it did is, because we have this set to basically hide empty keys, this means that if I'm only using certain of these Stream Deck buttons and I want to carve out the others, I can do things that give me a lot more flexibility. So, for example, if you look over here at what I'm doing here, if I come here and I just say, I just want to do things that are sitting at the top and the bottom, everything here in the middle is totally transparent. There's no clicks. There's no anything here. So you can get this to fit just in the type of space that you want. You can also, if you see right now, we have a colored background there, which is just a gray. You can set this to sort of any color you want. So you could have different controls that are different color coded. So you could easily see, these are my PTZ position controls. These are my multi-box shot controls. These are my guest assignment controls. So you could do that and sort of group them in different color groups. But one of the things you can also do is that you can turn around and say, I actually want to control the alpha channel of the color. So say I didn't want to see any border at all, which is basically how I had it set up. I could set my alpha channel value to 0, and you see now that whole border disappeared. The other thing you can do, let me just put something in here so we have, I'll make it back. You can turn around and say, if I wanted to have this position, say it was going to be over another window, but I may want to turn around and say, actually, let's adjust the opacity a bit because I want to be able to see what's behind it. You can do that. The other thing, which can be really handy, is you can control the key size. So I could come back and say, I can make this much, much bigger. If I wanted something that was very easy to see, very easy, say this was a touch screen, I want to make it simple for somebody to just touch the panel, you have that ability too. So huge amount of flexibility. And perhaps the best part is all of these coexist. I can now set up multiple Stream Decks, virtual Stream Decks, and position them on different screens, on different control interfaces. And when I have it where I want it, I can just click over here and say, let's see, I want to lock it in position. So if I had a control interface fixed in a certain position, I could just go position this exactly where I want it and just lock it in position. The other thing you can do, which I'll come back, is you can see it says hide panel. You have the ability in this to say, I want to hide it whenever the cursor leaves the panel or when I click on an action. and I want to have a hotkey to call it up. So you could turn around and have like buttons, like side buttons on a mouse, or keyboard shortcuts that you use to call up different virtual Stream Decks. And this means you could have Stream Decks all sitting in the same space, and then all you have to do is call up the one you want using a hotkey, and you have all of those controls there. So this gives you some interesting ways to work with your Stream Deck and make it really sort of a very efficient adjunct, sort of an accelerator to sort of streamline some of the things you want to do with different control interfaces. So this is free. So, but the trick here is that you do need one physical Stream Deck plugged into your system. It's sort of their key. So you don't just take this totally for free, but you have to have some Stream Deck plugged into your system, and then you can add as many virtual Stream Decks as you'd like. And, you know, I think that's great because there are, you could go on eBay and get an older Stream Deck and, you know, use that, but then turn around and say, now I have all these additional Stream Decks that I can add virtually to the interface that I have here. So that's probably, you know, the main elements to this. But everything else in it works just like a normal Stream Deck. So you can assign, if it's assignable to a Stream Deck button, it's assignable to a virtual Stream Deck button. And it has button push down and button push up. So all of those same things you can sort of see where those are two separate clicks, and you can basically do whatever you need to make an assignment there. And, you know, it is something that I think works great along with having physical keys, because sometimes you just want to say, I have something, I can just look at one screen and I have all my controls there. I don't have to look down. I don't have to navigate. They're all just there on screen as buttons. And especially for things you want to do that are sort of quick and easy, or things that need verification. So if I, for instance, if we went back to the UI on vMix, when I had this set up, I had the ability to assign guests to a box. So if I want to turn around and say, gee, I want to make sure that I have the correct guest assigned when I'm doing things here, I could turn around and say, okay, let me, let's see, I have a, say here, I'll put this in here as my preview. This is my first box, my number one box. So if I'm sitting here and I'm saying, I want to make sure I got the right person assigned to that, I can just look here and I know right here as I'm doing this, I'm looking at it and I'm seeing exactly who's coming up. You could also have this do things where I'm looking at it in a multi-box, like here's my 4-box. Okay, so I know I see you have a duplicate. So gee, what I probably want to do is go back here and put box 1 and set this up now so I have everybody separate. So you have lots of different things that you can do with this, in addition to having physical buttons on a Stream Deck or on your keyboard or other ways. So what I'd like to do next, so we'll go to, I think that we may have another comment. So let me get to that. And then we'll go into the actual vMix session here, because we did some things, and I learned a few things about the limits of some of the variables that you can have inside of vMix for, you know, set, you know, when you are assigning like an input or assigning a value for dynamic values and dynamic inputs. So I want to share that and how we got around that. But before we do that, I think we have one more comment here. So yes, so Bowles promo, yes, if you went on and got any physical Stream Deck and plugged it in, I mean, I have a Stream Deck that I have over here. I don't know if it reached, but this is probably a 8-year-old, you know, just when they first came out, 15 key generation 1 Stream Deck, and that would work fine with all of this. And then you have as many additional virtual Stream Decks as you need. So thank you. That is exactly, I think, one of the real advantages. And if you at some point you want to get a larger physical Stream Deck or something, this can be sort of a bridge for that. And you can save out the profile and load it on other Stream Decks. So if I had something that lined up with like the Stream Deck XL, which is 4 rows by 8 buttons a row. If you set that up in your virtual Stream Deck and at some point in the future you got a physical Stream Deck you wanted to use for that, you can just save it off your virtual Stream Deck and load it onto your physical one. So you can sort of keep your Stream Deck profiles and pass them around. So that looks to work pretty well as well. Okay, so let's jump in here and talk a little bit how we set up the vMix preset here, and then I'll go into how we set up all of these shortcuts and one script that we had to do to make all this work. So it is pretty straightforward. We have our background. So this is sort of a multi-box shot. So we have a background for that, so that we can stack all our layers on top of that. We have our host. This is just a looping video, but this would normally be a camera or somebody in set like this. Then we have 4 LiveToAirZ inputs. So these are, actually coming from LiveToAirZ. So if, for instance, I had somebody else that I wanted to put into box 2, I could just go and I could replace the person in box 2. I'm doing that all from LiveToAirZ now. So that stuff all works. And in here now, we have these as 4 inputs. So what I decided to do when setting up the multi-box shots is that I wanted to set up 4 mixes, because I said we're going to have up to 4 guests on screen along with the host. So as opposed to scrambling with a lot of different potential combos of things, what I did is I set up 4 mixes, and all of my multi-box shots are composed of the mixes. So from like the standard mix in vMix is mix 0. So for mix 1, 2, 3, and 4, that's box 1, box 2, box 3, and box 4. So that way, when I want to do any type of assignment, all I'm doing is I'm saying, take this guest, basically this channel from LiveToAirZ, and assign it to multi-box, to my mix, 1, 2, 3, or 4, which are the 4 boxes in my multi-box that I could have in multi-boxes. And that way, if I had something, for instance, let me just go over here. I had a host and a guest. I can now just select box 1, because this is only one box over here. And then I could just keep popping in which guest do I want in there and switch between them. And that gives me a very easy way to sort of work with guests. And because these are in mixes, this will persist across. So whoever I have in multi-box 1, in this box 1, if I go to a 2-shot, now you'll see that that person is still there. And so because I put them in a mix, and that mix is mapped to each of my multi-boxes. So hopefully that's clear, but that gives you a lot of flexibility and a lot of interesting ways to work with the guest. Because in the once you have them in a mix, you could do special overlays and other things like that you may want to do for there. That could be things like hand raises or other stuff. So you could see when people, but you could do that in the mix now, as opposed to trying to map it over different multi-box layouts. And then wherever they're cropped, that if you had them centered or in some way that they show up in all the different layouts, then you don't have to complicate how you do layers for other types of indicators on screen. So that's basically the core thing. And then, like I said, I have all my multi-box shots here. So I have my host, then my 2-box host and guest, host 2 guest, host 3 guest, host 4 guest. And then I also have what I call my solo shot, which is down here. And that, that's this button up here. So that's basically just taking whatever guest is in my sort of mix 1, and whoever I put there, that's the one that's coming in my solo. So it's very easy, again, to track against the conversation that may be going on. And, this is just a very simple interface for doing this type of stuff. And at the very end, I just have I'll put this up so you get it. And I probably should have put this up at the beginning. Let's put this on here. So this is the beta website for Elgato, where you can get the Stream Deck. I should have put this up in the beginning. So sorry about that. But it's just if you're, it would probably be different if you're not in the US. So I apologize that I just picked up the US one here. But this will give you a link to download Stream Deck version 7 here, and as well as other beta software that Elgato has if you're using any of their other products. So this is definitely, if you need to find it, you can just go and say Elgato Stream Deck 7 beta download, and you'll probably come to it if the link would be different in your country or location. So just so you have that there. But that's everything that we have set up here. But what I want to touch on a bit is, how do I have all of these boxes, all these buttons functioning? For the most part, I'm going to go in here, and you can see this is truly overlaid now. This over everything I do here. So if I come in here, I just have sort of get this into a spot where we can all see it here. I'm doing things where I set up all the different selecting boxes, selecting guests, setting all this stuff. So let's just do a quick look at how I did this. For selecting, assigning a guest to a specific box, one of the boxes in a multi-box shot, I can go and say, let me select the box. And to do that, what I'm doing is I am using my set dynamic value 1 to say, which box do I want? And so that's basically just coming into this with a, setting a value up. I'm not taking any action yet. So that's what I do there. And so if it's box 4, you can see the same thing. It's set dynamic value here. But in this case, it's just using value 4 instead of value 1. And then when I want to assign a guest to that box, I come in here, and what I'm doing is I'm now setting dynamic input to say which one of the 4 guests from LiveToAirZ, 1, 2, 3, or 4, which input do I want to assign to that mix. And then, and I'll get to this when I go through the scripting, I'm calling a script which actually sets that box to that guest. And there's a reason I just can't do this, through a simple, easy control. So we'll get to that. I'll do that. I'll cover that in a second. So that's basically all I'm doing here. In here, I'm setting a dynamic value. Then I'm setting a dynamic input and calling a script. And so that's how these buttons are all mapped. The buttons over here for the different multi-box layouts or different on-screen layouts, they're very similar here. So if I go my host plus guest, all I'm doing is I'm picking this box, and these are just standard shortcuts, and I'm doing merges. And by doing this as merges, that lets me, I'll sort of show you over here as I go through this. As I do this, I say, here's host plus guest, and then now you can see that these sort of slide around, and it's sort of a smoother transition. If I'm doing something where I have a host and a guest, I could turn around now and click and say, I just want to see the guest, I just want to see the host, or I want to see them both together. And it has sort of a smoother thing. But so these are just standard merge transitions that we're doing to create that kind of smooth movement on screen. Let me just see over here. So the other element to this, though, is that I said we have to call a script to do this. So let me jump over to my other screen and talk a bit about the script that I have here. And let me see if I just hide this panel. So basically, here was the problem. What I wanted to do was, when you do an assignment, you can see here, I can say I have a function where I want to do a merge. I want to take an input and merge that. But you can also say, which mix do I want to do this on? Well, unfortunately, it doesn't work with dynamic values. So I thought when I was going to set this up that I would just have, the same thing I have for input, where I have dynamic 1, which is pulling a dynamic input. I thought for mix, it would just say dynamic 1, and I pull the value from dynamic value 1, and that would be the assignment. But that does not work. So it just does not work gets confused, thinks you're trying to do some sort of variable assignment and says it's not valid. So what I had to do is I had to go and I had to read this out of the vMix XML, which is all the vMix state. So in here, what I'm doing is I'm opening that up. I am creating an XML document, loading this in, and then I am pulling out dynamic value 1, the inner text from the vMix session. So this is just a quick way to get that. And I just have this defined as a string. So it's a sort of a one-shot thing. But now this variable, box mix, which mix is associated with that box, I can use that in the API call. So this is why I had to do this in a slightly different way, where I had to be able to pull this out as a little script. And what makes this simple is that all I'm doing when I press a button on the Stream Deck is I'm doing the set to say, which input am I talking about? And then I'm just calling the script when I press the, this guest, and it's turning around saying, okay, what's my current box that's set up? And it pulls that in through the vMix script and then does the merge function right there. So it's a very simple script, but this can be very, very useful for other things where you're trying to do mix-based adjustments using any type of shortcut or scripting. It's something I didn't realize I couldn't do until now, so it was cool that I found that out. But this is a very simple way to do this, and this is all up on the link in the show notes, so you'll be able to go here and pull all this down off of our drive for all of this. So hopefully you find this interesting and useful. I think it isn't a difficult process to do, and it is basically, if you have any Stream Deck at all, you have the ability to do all of this, which I think is really cool. But from a setup point of view, I think this is something a lot of you could integrate without a lot of disruption, and sort of augment some of the or streamline some of the workflow things that you may already have in place for your productions. Okay, so before we jump to the post show, let me go. We have a few more comments here, and we can go through that, and then we'll jump in. We can talk about anything. So, could you copy an existing this is Udaman asking if you could copy an existing profile to a new virtual Stream Deck. The answer is yes. But as with most things on the Stream Deck, you will probably have to remap the keys, because you can copy the profile, but the values that are associated with those profiles, if it's something like in vMix, those won't carry over. So you would need to do that remap inside of vMix. And I'm glad you actually mentioned that, because there is something to be aware of. So we can go back into the vMix interface. Let me just jump here and I'll show you, because thank you for mentioning this, you. Assigning these is a little bit of a trick. So if I am, go here, and what I need to do, so I'll sort of pull this over here so you can at least sort of see. Let me go to Stream Deck Virtual 1, which I think is here. So if I want to assign here, so let me sort of open this up. I'm sorry, this is, I'm not, well, if I wanted to, I'm sorry, this is me being stupid. I don't need this over here. If I were to go into vMix and say this is host, so let's go to the shortcuts. If I go over to host here, when you go in here, you have to assign a key. So the trick is, if I am trying to assign this key, I have no way of clicking over here on OK. So the trick for this is, what you have to do is over here, do tab twice, which will get the tab on the OK button. Then you click and you hold this button down, and then all you have to do is click enter, and then it takes that as the Stream Deck button. So it took me a try to figure that out, but that's how you make that sort of assignment in vMix. So once you get used to it, it's really not that more time consuming than working on your normal Stream Deck, but it's just something to be aware of when you do the assignments on here. That only applies to the ones that are in vMix, not standard buttons like I have here for timers and other stuff. Those just map pretty cleanly. All right, so let's see what others do we have here. So yes, thank you, Michael. Yes, it's been an interesting few weeks for me the past month, but thank you all for being patient with things, and hopefully we can get things back to at least a more normal schedule. So thanks. So yeah, it is a great way to use some of this free space, and as you use with scripting, so you could do things like, say you're bringing in guests, even using like vMix Call or something, you could actually have a push to talk button here that you could just put right here, center of your screen. And that could be something that you just use a virtual Stream Deck for. And then when you want to, you can select, a guest in preview and use scripting to say, I'm just doing push to talk and talking to that guest and feeding them something back. So cool things that you can do that sort of augment it. And because when you set up a virtual Stream Deck, you have the ability to control its size. So let me sort of make this visible, and I'll drag this over here. I could turn around and say, gee, this is like enormous. But if I go in here and say, let me actually just shrink this guy all the way down, and I could do something now where I position him, in here somehow, that sort of thing now could fit. And that means that not only is it sort of just fixed blocks, but I can actually scale and size it and do the opacity to get these things to fit. So if I put these in here, this would be a great example of where you could sort of put this right here and move this so this fits right in the space you want there. And, I think that would be ideal for that type of thing where you just want to have a couple of extra functions that are right there for you. Different types of transitions that you want to always have, or other types of overlays that you want to be able to put up. You can set that all here, and that could make it a lot easier. Okay. So let's see. So Randall's talking about LiveToAirZ to vMix and back to LiveToAirZ, trying to figure out composition for vMix and how it integrates. Okay, Randall, if you can hold on, I'll cover that as our first thing inside of the post show, because that way I can sort of jump in and go into more of a LiveToAirZ type of thing. But I definitely cover that just in a few minutes. So thanks. Good question, though. So unfortunately, there is not an iPad version. So I wish, or at least I did not see one there. They do have a tablet app that I don't know if it's as flexible. And that was, I think, what did they call it when you sit there? Yeah, add mobile device, which I think you can do. So I don't believe, when you do this on a mobile device, that is a subscription-based thing that you need to buy and, pay an annual fee for. But that is their option for iPad. Not that it's bad, it's just sort of a different beast altogether, and you can't use the same mechanisms here. So, yeah, I mean, it has some really nice things, but I do think you have to think about how you want to use this. But I mean, I showed this here, solidly in vMix, but you may have other production apps that you are using along with vMix to do things that you could then sort of layer these into and pin them. So if you have them on fixed positions on screen, that could give you sort of that augmentation across different applications. So I think there is definitely a lot of potential for this type of setup. All right, so what I like to do is I will wrap up the main show here. I do want to get to Randall's question. We'll do that first thing in the post show. If you can join us for the post show, that would be really great. If you can't, I appreciate you taking the time to join us live here today. And I will see you all in a couple of weeks, unless it's the post show. And I'll see you then. Thanks, everybody. Take care. All right, everybody. Welcome back. So thank you for hanging out for the post show here. So Randall was asking a question about how everything works between LiveToAirZ, which I'll sort of how we work with this, and vMix and back and forth. So what I'm gonna do is I have LiveToAirZ now. I put it on a screen over here where I could probably call this up in the post show here. So inside LiveToAirZ, this is basically, these are the guests that I have. So these are I had like 7 or 8 guests connected here. These are guests that are all assigned. So if I sort of drop them off, I'm going to clear all these channels out. Oh, help if I did it on the right screen here. So you can see all the guests start to appear here. So these are all the guests that I have. So these guests, when I have this set up, I can control lots of different things about what happens when guests are on air and off air and where their audio and video are routed. So in LiveToAirZ, that's the media tab over here. So in this case, I have 5 channels that are set up. And for all of these, I have, it's sending out an NDI video. So we have that, and it's sending NDI audio. So those are my 2 outputs that I have. For secondary video out, if I had a decklink card in here, I could do that to send it out via SDI if I wanted to. And the same for secondary audio. I could do things like send it out a analog device or a Dante device and have that go out as my audio, and I can control the resolution. So that's all the outputs. Inside of vMix, when I open up vMix, I am just looking for these NDI sources as inputs. So if I come over here, let me just add an input here. So let me get this out of the way. If I go to NDI, you're seeing these are the last videos that I had coming out for those guests. This is NDI channel 5, which is coming out. So I can just add this then as an NDI feed, and that will come into vMix via NDI. I could also, as I said, use it through SDI or something else if I wanted to do different inputs and different methods for putting audio as well as video out. So that's the way you get it into vMix. For the return, if I switch back to my LiveToAirZ interface here, I have an on-air channel return and an off-air channel return. Unlike our traditional sort of live-to-air, which is all WebRTC based, and we have control all the way down to the front end, so we can send individual video feeds to each individual guest. Zoom basically has one video feed that goes back to everybody that's inside of a meeting. But you can break it up into things like breakout rooms and other things where they could get a distinct video return from people in meetings, just different breakout rooms. So there's some flexibility here. But what we do is we let you turn around and select a vMix output or any NDI or available output to come in as this is what the guests will see and hear from you when they're selected as off air, and this is what they'll see and hear from you when they're selected as on air. When guests are off air, their video is not live. When guests are on air, their video and audio is live. So we have that on air, off air more as a green room style buffer where all the guests that are in a meeting, if they're off air, they know they can all talk and nothing is going live. When they're on air, they're aware that they then have to be careful about what they say or do because that could be on camera and going live. So we get to have those 2 set up. And when I am doing on air or off air, you just get different videos back. So let me see if I could show something different here. So I think I had this set up where I have an output. Let me set a different output for, for my mix 3, whatever's in there. So, okay. So what I did now is if I go off air and on air, let me see if Yeah, I don't have an easy way to show you, but basically what I'd be able to do is I would be able to turn around and say, I could have somebody that is uh, joining that, you know, basically monitoring and hosting the event to be on camera and talking to everybody when they're off air. And then I could actually switch over to my vMix or TriCaster or ATEM output and be feeding that in as my return video when they're on air. So I can do sort of a easy, just conversational, let's talk, let's get prepped. And then when I switch on air, it can be something where I have it very simply, this is what you'll see as a on-air guest. And, you know, it works really well because this is the video that's going back to everybody, whether they're assigned to a channel or not. And I think that's a very important piece of this, where you're looking at this now and saying, I really can adjust like everybody simultaneously. And if you needed to do things that were separate and distinct, you can create breakout rooms, and LiveToAirZ could be, you could have a LiveToAirZ running inside a breakout room. And so you could have things, you know, LiveToAirZ in a meeting, LiveToAirZ in a breakout room. So you could effectively have multiple switched concurrent events. So you could have multiple breakout rooms that were different sessions, and everybody in a meeting, a common meeting at the beginning to decide what session they want to go to, things like that. So it has some flexibility for how you do the routing. But so what Reynolds saying, it seems that the LiveToAirZ window with the vMix guest composition would duplicate the other Zoom windows with each of the guests. Okay. It doesn't, the way I have this set up, I'm not using anything inside of, so vMix does have the ability to pull in Zoom guests. So you can join a meeting and you can pull in those guests individually. If you sort of want to think of how you would position, why would I use one over the other? If I just want to bring on a guest as sort of to do an interview, what is inside of vMix already with their ability to bring in a Zoom guest would give you what you want. You just bring somebody up and you have them there, and you can switch them with audio and video. A lot of what we're focused on with LiveToAirZ is all the interactive things. So okay, so I'm sorry. Yeah, somebody just said I'm misinterpreting the question here. So sorry about that, Rena. When people get something going back to them inside of the LiveToAirZ, where it's coming back for their on-air or off-air, what somebody will see will be whatever is the production video. So you will get things where, unlike in Zoom itself, where the guests can see, you know, themselves in real time, the only reason that's possible is because my camera going into Zoom is actually layered on the screen locally. So it's not like going up to Zoom and then coming back as a video. This is coming in direct from my webcam into the Zoom application and being displayed. So you have that coming in sort of in a real time. If you have an issue with what you want the guests to see, where you don't really want the guests to necessarily see each other, you can actually handle that by just putting a totally different Zoom return for them. So you could turn around and say, what I'll do for my remote guest is I will have a separate switch show sort of in one of the mixes. So what we talked about earlier, where I could turn around and say, I'll just have the host, or I'll just have sort of reference videos or slides or other things so that people could see, but they'll see each other inside of Zoom to, you know, to have things conversational, to have multiple guests. The other thing is that you could turn around and just say, you will see yourself out of sync, but you'll hear yourself in sync because, you know, the audio coming back in Zoom is sort of has that mix minus, so they won't get themselves. We will not send guest audio, if you set it up correctly. You will not send any of the guest audio for the Zoom guests, the Zoom participants. None of that audio will go back to your Zoom feeds because that will give you that sort of echo effect. So you don't want that. But having the video go back, you can do a separate one, or you can just tell the guest, yeah, it may be maybe a little uncomfortable, but only for themselves. So if the other guests are, if they're just watching the screen, the main screen, you sort of spotlight it. Let me see if I can pull this over here. Just yeah, there we go. So if I wanted to do this, I could turn around and say, so here's what I have here. What you would normally do is you do something like say spotlight this. Uh, and if I go to spotlight for everyone, that's going to put that there. So whatever guest that I have here uh, will be, their video up here will be out of sync slightly with their video here because this video is making a round trip. It's this video going up to Zoom, coming to us, and coming back up to Zoom and down to them again. So there is some latency in that. But all the other guests, if they're not seeing that, they're not seeing themselves unless they're in sort of the main show. So you do have that ability to have, have people focus here instead of on their own local video. And knowing, this is a general problem when anybody comes in through a remote, whatever video they see, if it includes them coming back as a feed, they'll be a little out of sync. And it's just something you get used to it pretty quickly if you are, doing this on a regular basis where, seeing yourself a little out of sync. But this will give you sort of an easy big show window that they can have. And if you're doing something like a webinar or things like that, you basically don't have any guest shows up here. You can just pick guests and assign them. And they'll just see this video as the return video. And it would be very much just like as if this were live to air. So if you have more questions, I'm sorry if that makes it, sort of a little confusing, but this is sort of the general issue with remote guests. And yeah, they are two unique layouts that you can have for what people will see in their Zoom meeting. And one of them can be all prep and preview, and the other can be going live. So you can set that up definitely in a live and an on-air, off-air style model. So hopefully that didn't confuse things too much, but that's pretty much the way we have this. And and with everything that we have, when we have these guests, we see them all here, and you can do things like filter guests and other things. So I could just do it by name. So say I knew that, somebody was named Larry. So I can go there and I can just find individual guests and pull them in. So, there's a reason why we have, this set up as a distinct thing from the vMix embedded, because it does give you some capabilities. Plus we do, chats and other things that we can give you as metadata and, work with those types of things. So a few differences, and it's, we can also work with reactions and stuff like that. So there's a few reasons why you could still use both of them. One would just be for simple guest participation. The other would be for interactivity. And this could be really around an audience where you may have an individual guest you'd bring on because they may raise a hand and have a question. But you could still have, panelists or other things coming in directly through vMix, either using Zoom or using call or using LiveToAirZ as opposed to LiveToAirZ. So different options for all of this. So, all right. So, Michael, thank you. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you got something out of it. And go. We can catch up later. Okay, good, Randall. And you can always reach out, and that goes to everybody. Just reach out to us, especially on any sort of LiveToAirZ stuff. Just go support@neural.com, and we can get back to you if you have questions about how all this would integrate in a production setting. All right, so let me see if we have anything more here. Okay, well, it looks like we may be good. Okay, so thanks everybody for hanging out for the post show. I know it's was a short show today, but hopefully you found it interest sparking, and maybe you get some good ideas for different ways you can use this stuff. But outside of that, I think we'll probably call it as a wrap for today. So thank you all for joining. We should be back. So yeah, I think July 26th, which is 2 weeks from today, with another show. One thing that I did want to just touch on is that given like everything that I have going on right now, both work-wise, because we got a new product out, as well as some of the stuff I had personally that I have to deal with on the medical side, I am probably going to be doing more pre-recorded sort of premiere shows in the mix, because those I can do sort of without having to lock in a specific day. I can do those over time and then just do the premieres. So we're probably going to have a mix of lives and premieres. I definitely want to keep the lives as a anchor point for everything we do. I really value this sort of interactivity and feedback. So definitely, share your comments. You can send me messages on Facebook, probably the easiest way, or post them in the on the Streaming Alchemy page, and I'll try to work in topics that you are clearly interested in, and make sure that we schedule enough of our live events here to keep the community engaged and connected. So until then, 2 weeks. Be safe, be well. I'll see you.